Hi there, this is Matt Wakeling, and you're listening to the Guitar Speak podcast, produced here in Sydney, Australia. Thank you so much for joining me for episode number 83. Now today, I speak to John Norum of the band Europe, which was a very cool thing to do. I first heard John's playing, and perhaps you did too, when Europe had a worldwide smash with the song The Final Countdown. Now that was from their third album of the same name, The Final Countdown, and it just went, we would call it viral now. It was just a huge hit all around the world. Great song. And at the time, I didn't know what John was doing in that guitar solo, but I just knew it was incredible. Sometime later, I knew he was fusing neoclassical influences with a really heavy blues background and inserting them into one very, very memorable solo. John's playing has graced most of the albums released by Europe, and that represents over 25 million albums sold around the world in a 35-year career, which is pretty amazing. Now, the latest Europe album is Walk the Earth, and that was released in 2017. And man, I got to tell you, it is such a great record. The songs and production and guitar tones are fantastic, and they owe a lot more to 70s rock, a lot more to Purple and Zeppelin than the 80s hair metal, which you might first associate with Europe if you don't know much beyond that huge single, The Final Countdown. John's playing is amazing on that record. He talks us through the production and the songwriting. And that album was recorded in the legendary Abbey Road studios in London, so it was very cool to get the background on that record. John was kind enough to talk to us just a couple of days before he hopped on a plane to head to Australia for Europe's very first tour of this nation. And I was surprised I hadn't been here before. John was hanging out with his family, playing with his young children, in between press commitments, so I did really appreciate his time. And my thanks also to Chris Marrick from Marrick Media for setting up this interview. All right, let's just jump straight into it. Here's my conversation with John Norum of the band Europe. Here we go. John Norum, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Thank you.
Great to have you. We're all very excited that Europe will be touring Australia in May 2018. I was surprised that this was the first Europe tour of Australia.
Yes, yeah, it will be the first time. None of us has ever been there before. I mean, we haven't been there as a band or in holiday or anything like that. So it would be the first time for all of us.
Oh, great.
So we're very excited to come to Australia, because we've been all over the world and played and toured and stuff, but we've never been in Australia, so we're very excited to finally come to Australia and play. Excellent. For all the fans.
Great stuff. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. John, when I want to talk about the new album, such a great record, but if I can go back a bit, the first time I heard you, and I'm guessing a lot of guitar players, the first time we heard you was when The Final Countdown was released, and when I was advanced enough to try and work out what you were doing, which wasn't for a while, but I realized you were really linking some very fiery diatonic playing with a really heavy blues influence. In fact, the solo in that song, you're really leapfrogging between the two, and that seems to be a hallmark of your style. John, can I ask what influenced you in developing that style?
Well, it started with Richie Blackmore when I heard Made in Japan.
Okay. Yeah.
When that came, I heard it like in the mid '70s sometimes. A friend of mine in school, he said he's got to hear this album. And before that, I've been mainly just listening to more softer stuff like Elvis. Albums that my mom and dad had at home, basically. Elvis, Beatles, the Stones, and things like that, bands like that, and the Purple, Made in Japan. That was it for me. This when I heard, like, wow, when I heard Strange Kind of Woman, Richie Blackmore's tone and his phrasing and everything, and it was heavy, and that's when I decided that I wanted to start to play lead guitar.
Okay.
Because before that, I was just mainly strumming on my mom's acoustic guitar at home, playing along with Elvis songs and things like that. so that's really how when it started. And when I decided, it's like I want to learn how to play lead guitar, because that was the coolest thing I ever heard.
That's great. Were you playing an electric guitar at that stage?
No, I was just playing acoustic.
Okay.
I was just learning chords. My mom is a guitar player as well. She showed me like a few chords so I can play along to the Elvis albums and Cliff Richard and whatever else it was at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
So yeah, I didn't have an electric guitar then, but I finally got one in I think it was in the mid-70s sometime, and I can't remember the year because I'm really bad at years and dates and stuff like that. And the first one I got was an Arbeiter, and it had a whammy bar on it, which was very exciting. You can do some dive bombs and stuff.
Yeah, perfect.
And it was like an SG-shaped guitar with like a Strat headstock,
Yeah.
It's like a cheap guitar, but yeah, I remember when I got it. I saved the money for quite some time, and I just picked it up at this guy's house, and he didn't have a case to it, and so I just kind of walked along the street there with the guitar, and when I got home, I put it against the wall, and when it was time to go to bed, and I couldn't sleep all night. I was like just laying there staring at this thing. It was like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was exciting. So and after that, I just I got a Japanese Les Paul called Morris.
Okay.
Gold top, and just started playing along to bands like UFO, Michael Schenker, Gary Moore, Thin Lizzy, all the guitar players.
Yeah, cool.
Actually. And I was a huge Lizzy fan, still is.
Okay. Yep.
And Black Sabbath and whatever was going on at the time, whatever the 70s bands, the hard rock 70s bands, and
sure,
were huge influence, so it was a mix between, and also I was very much into because my stepdad had a huge collection of albums with blues guitar players like Mike Bloomfield and John Mayall's Blues Breakers with Peter Green and Eric Clapton and things like that. So he said to me, like, you got to listen to this. This is kind of like the Bible for blues and rock guitar. And so I listened to that stuff a lot. Like the Eric Clapton, Peter Green one, Hard Road, and the classic Biano album.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, they say Biano. They say Beano. I think they say actually Beano album, but it's not actually called. It's not called that. It's just because Eric Clapton sitting there reading it. I think it's just called John Mayall's Blues Breakers featuring Eric Clapton.
Okay.
Eric Clapton or something like that. But for some reason, people call that the Beano album because he's reading the comic, when he's reading it.
Oh, that's right, on the cover, yes.
So, yeah.
That's cool.
So the melodic part, the melodic stuff, basically comes from Thin Lizzy, the harmonies, and Michael Schenker was also very big influence because of his great melodies that he did with UFO, the albums he did with UFO in the 70s.
Okay.
That's how it started.
That's cool.
I just kind of mixed it all together. With a little bit more of the classical stuff that Richard Blackmore did, and you can actually hear that on the final countdown solo. It's very much Richard Blackmore influence, and then you have a few blues licks thrown in there.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So
yeah, fantastic. Yeah. That's so cool. I love that. So yeah, I guess what you've just explained, that really sums up those kind of two sides of your playing, but you seem to meld them together very seamlessly. It's really your thing now.
Yeah. I just do what I do, whatever feels natural, and I don't I don't analyze it that much anymore. I used to do it more in the 80s, you know, think about those things. But now, I just, whatever fits the song's the best, you know, and that's what I'm after. If it's a fast song, I might just go for it and just improvise, you know, whatever happens. But if it's a more a slow song or a more melodic song, I like to work out like a melody thing in it, and I might borrow a melody line from the vocals or something and add it into the guitar solo and things like that, you know.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. The latest Europe album, Walk the Earth, that came out in 2017, full of so much great stuff. It's interesting you mentioned the 70s hard rock influences for a band that, yeah, obviously you guys started in the 80s, but you seem to bring a lot of the 70s. I hear a lot of your synthesis of, I guess, Deep Purple and Zeppelin and some of those influences on the new record. Sounds great.
Yeah. Those are the bands that influenced us when we started, you know. And we kind of have gone back to the roots a bit, you know, with that whole thing. You know, we want to. It's nothing really planned, like we want to play, you know, classic rock or anything like that. It just has come natural to us now, you know. And we recorded the last album at Abbey Road Studios in London.
Yeah.
So it was fun. It was exciting to be there, and we wanted to get that sound. We wanted to get that warm sound that the albums had in the 70s, you know. And because I mean, a lot of albums these days sound very cold to me. I mean, because everything is recorded digital and all that stuff. So we use old tape machines and old compressors, and I mean Joey sang through a compressor that John Lennon once used, you know. And,
wow, that's really cool.
And I'm using the same console as for the guitar parts and for some drums as well, like Pink Floyd recorded Dark Side of the Moon on the same gear, you know. It's still there, you know. So it was exciting to be there and finally get to work in such a legendary place. You know, so.
Absolutely, yeah. So that was a deliberate move to record at Abbey Road to capture some of that vintage kind of vibe through the equipment and that space.
Yeah. That's why the album sounds so warm, you know, because we use all that gear that is from the 60s and the 70s, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a warm sound. It's a warm, thick sounding album, you know. It's and that's the way we like it, you know. I mean, I think the best recordings and the best sounding albums came from the 70s, you know. So I'm like I said before, I'm very old school in that sense. I'm not into high tech new productions that much, you know. I like it to sound warm and nice.
Yeah, cool. The guitars sound fantastic. Like, I mean, the whole album sounds great, but the guitars are so big and present. What sort of gear are you running to pull those tones?
Amps, you mean, guitars?
Yeah. What amps did you bring along in guitars?
Yeah. It's Marshall amps. One is a 50 watt, which is from 1971.
Okay.
Yep. It's actually a bass amp. It's a model 1986.
Is it the super bass?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
And that one is a great sounding amp. So I use that one for all the 90% of the album.
Okay.
I use that one, and except for one solo and a few rhythm parts where I mix when I do some overdubs on the rhythms. I use the Jason 800.
Okay. Yep.
Which is I guess considered vintage now too, because it's from like the early 80s.
Yeah.
Jason 800
yes.
amp. So yeah, it was just those two amps that old 71 and an 80s Jason 800 that I mixed together. You know?
Great.
So, yeah.
Did
and
you?
the guitars are just you know, vintage stuff. You know, I mean, it's I have a 65 Strat, which I had now for 30 years.
Okay.
It's actually the same guitar I recorded the Final Countdown.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So
Awesome.
I call it the Final Countdown guitar.
That's great.
And then one Les Paul 58 reissue, and the Flying V. You know, I like these classic shapes. You know, I'm not into the any funny shapes, funny shape little guitars.
Sure.
It's a Telecaster and Flying V's and Strats and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Old school stuff, basically.
Cool. Are you boosting the amps with any pedals or anything particularly for some of the solos and things?
Not the Jason 800. I just go straight into that one. It doesn't need any boost or anything because that one has enough gain already.
Sure.
But the 71, I use an overdrive pedal, which is a DoD 250 overdrive preamp.
Oh, okay, yes, the classic.
A classic one. The first one they made, I think, it came out in the late 70s sometime, I think.
Okay, great.
So I used that one with a 71 50 watt amp. Those are great, but it's quite noisy, so you have to use a noise gate in front of it. They sound great. They have great sustain, and they have a lot of string in the sound. You know, they don't compress so much either. So just one of those old stump boxes. You know.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Sounds fantastic.
That's it, and then we just add whatever effects we want to add. We just do that, through the mixing, like a little bit of reverb, maybe a little bit of delay in a few places and things like that. And then I use a fuzz box too on one song, Haze, and because our producer Dave Cobb. He's a huge fan of old fuzz boxes, so he wanted me to use it on one song.
Okay.
Because I've never really been into fuzz boxes that much, but when I heard it, this is really cool, So I don't know, one of those old ones. I don't know what it's called. And the flanger as well on one song, I think. So just not many effects, not into really that much effects. I just want to have a little bit of delay and maybe a chorus or a flanger on some like clean stuff.
Okay, yeah.
And that's about it.
Nice.
And of course the wah-wah pedal. I have to. Of course the wah-wah pedal.
Yep.
Is very important. I love the wah-wah pedal. Yeah, I think the best one I ever heard is the one that Custom Audio Electronics in Los Angeles makes.
Oh, okay,
Bob Bradshaw.
The Bob Bradshaw one, yeah, cool.
That one is amazing. It has two settings. You can get one that is kind of darker, and one sounds kind of like an old crybaby.
Okay,
and also has a boost function in it as well, so you can get an extra boost. When you get tired, after you've been playing for like an hour and a half, and you still have half an hour to go, you push that thing in and you get a little bit of help. So on the way, it's like
yes.
when you think it's like getting tired, you get a little help from that thing, a little boost.
That's great. That's cool.
Yeah.
The when you mentioned the fuzz sound, that must be on the track Wolves, I think. That stuck out, that tone.
Yeah. It's. I'm sure it's on Haze, and it might be on some other song as well. I can't remember.
Okay.
Now, but I'm sure it's all over the place on the song Haze.
Yeah, that gets pretty trippy, that song. All the rhythm stuff is a fuzz box, and also actually I did a solo too on. I did a solo too on that song with a fuzz box, and I think I did another solo as well with a fuzz box. Okay.
I can't remember, but I think it's like 2 songs or something like that. Because when you do it, I don't plan it ahead of time. It's just kind of like go in and do it. And it's like Dave Cobb, the producer, comes up, why don't you use a fuzz box on this? It's like, yeah, sure, let's try it. And then we try it, and that sounded great, it didn't work or whatever. And then I kind of just move on and I forget about it. And then I don't remember what I used, what. But the main sound on the album is the Jason 800 straight in and the Super Bass 51 with the DOD 250 overdrive preamp. Cool. That's the main sound.
Great sounds, yeah. Very organic and just big and very, very defined. I think probably because they're not very high gain sound. They're relatively they're very thick, but they don't have a lot of gain by today's standards. You can really there's a lot of clarity in all the parts that you play.
Yeah. I'm not into too much gain in overdrive and fizzy kind of guitar sound. I like it kind of clean, I mean, one of my favorite guitar sounds is on Made in Japan.
Yeah.
Richard Blackmore. I mean, he used like a 200 watt major, a Marshall major 200 watt, and just a tone bender with a booster or something, and just straight in. And it had a very clean sound, but a lot of sustain. So I like a lot of sustain, but I don't like it when it gets fizzy and fuzzy. I like to keep it kind of clean, So you can hear what you're playing. Some people can hear what you're playing. Yeah,
nice. That sounds big. Sounds big. There's a couple of interesting songs on the album, Pictures and Turn to Dust. They have some very interesting chord changes, and you negotiate those very well. Do you have to plan out when you're soloing over those songs that are moving around, that are modulating in different places?
I mean, it was quite simple actually to put that together. I mean, we just have to figure out what kind of sound really that fits the songs, and I just do a bunch of takes. Sometimes I just try different songs and do a bunch. I might do 5 or 10 takes or something, because sometimes I'm not sure what is going to fit the song the best. And then Dave Cobb just goes through and says, I like this one the best. And then he just, said, just go for it, so the songs are quite simple. It's not nothing. It's not like Aldo Meola or anything, but but they're quite interesting chord changes and stuff like that. It's a lot more. It's a lot more of that now than any previous album, for sure.
Sure.
So, and a lot of that stuff comes from our keyboard player, Nick Michaeli, because he can come up with stuff on the keyboard which are very interesting, and he's also he's very much into like Genesis and Yes and Frank Zappa and bands like that, so he can come up with some really weird stuff, and it's like, then I have to like copy it on the guitar. So, oh damn, this is weird. There's like weird chords and stuff, but so yeah. It's good. It's fun. It's fun to do that type of thing too, not just regular bar chords, typical bar chords all the time, but come up with different type of weird chord changes and stuff like that.
Nice. I mean, talking about the keys, there's some really good, really interesting unison lines you do with the organ tones on some of the tracks as well.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great. It's a great sound. Yeah, Nick Michaeli he's amazing. He's one of the best, I think.
Yeah, cool.
Killer.
So when you come to Australia later this month, what are you able to bring with you in terms of gear? Do you bring your entire rig, or do you have to trim it down a little?
No, we have to trim it down a little bit. I'm bringing pretty much the whole rig. I mean, except for the cabinets.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Because So the cabinets, we just do rentals on the cabinets.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm using like 6 of them or something. I don't know how many it's going to be this time around, but it's not necessary to bring those things because it's Marshall anyway.
Of course, you can get them anywhere.
Marshall cabs, you can find them anywhere.
I'm sure we'll find 6 of them in Australia for you.
Yeah. I prefer the vintage 30s. Those are my favorites.
Okay.
But the 75 watts, are okay too. But the vintage 30s are my favorites.
Okay. Yeah.
But I'm bringing, I'm bringing the amps, bring 2 amps. But I usually just use one. But in case one breaks down, so it's good to have it back up.
Okay. Yeah.
And I bring 4 guitars. Usually I have 5 on the road, but we manage with 4.
Okay. Yeah.
So and the tiny, not tiny, but it's not tiny anymore. It used to be a lot smaller. I used to have only 3 pedals on a cardboard thing. Very minimal, small board. But now I have one of those mastermind switching systems, and it has a pedal board with. It has 5 loops in it, so I have access to, and that's behind the stage. I just run through it. So I just have the mastermind foot control in the front, which has a phase 90 and a exotic EP booster and a flanger and the wall pedal and the delay, and that's it.
Okay. Yep.
And that's it. Yeah.
Sounds good.
So that works.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Don't need any more than that, really. I don't use them that much anyway. So I mean, I think the flanger and the phaser I used to use like maybe 3 or 4 times in the whole set. The set is like
sure.
2 hours long. But,
yeah.
But it still makes a difference in the songs because I like it to sound like the album. Really recreate whatever I used on the album.
Sure.
Albums, so as close as possible.
Yep. Yeah, cool. When you say you'll bring 4 guitars, do you bring your vintage guitars on the road, or do you take other ones?
No, I leave them at home.
Yeah.
I have they kind of too valuable to bring on the road.
Sure. Yeah.
But the ones I'm bringing, they sound just as good. They sound great. But I leave the old 60s Strats at home. And I have one of Gary Moore's old Strats.
Oh, really? Wow.
And yeah. So I leave those vintage pieces at home. But because I'm bringing, when you compare them to the old ones, they sound just as good. So yeah.
Sure. Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, you want to bring I don't see the point of bringing a 59 Les Paul when you can have a 59 reissue that sounds pretty close. I mean, it's like the difference in value is like
yes, yeah,
it's huge. So but I use all that stuff in the studio when we record. I use both new guitars, and when I say new. The newest one is probably from 2004. I mean, that's the newest one I have. But it's a really good Strat. It sounds like an old one, So, so yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, John, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Really great to meet you and talk about your career and the new record. And yeah, as I said, we're really looking forward to seeing you later this month for your debut Australian tour.
Yes, it's great. We're leaving now on Thursday, so we're very excited. We're going to Indonesia first to do one show there.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then to Australia 3 days later. So we have a few days there to adapt to the time difference and also the climate. Because in Sweden it's always not always cold. Today's a kind of nice day, but it's a huge difference compared to Australia. So
it is.
So and the time difference. I don't know what the time difference is. What time is it there now?
And now it's about 9:30 Monday night.
A Monday night. Okay.
Yeah.
What's happening? It's like 1 o'clock here in the daytime.
Okay, on Monday? Is it Monday or Sunday?
Yeah, it's Monday.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So not
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
okay. So not too different. Yeah.
Yes, so it takes a few days to adjust
Yeah,
to
sure.
the time difference, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it'll be good. But we're very excited to come to Australia finally. We've been, just waiting to do this for so long, and the fans have been on us like crazy. It's like, when are you coming? When are you coming? and finally we get to do it. So we're very excited about it.
Yeah, fantastic.
It's gonna be fun.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, John, and enjoy the rest of your day with your kids before you hit the road again.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, John. See you soon. Bye. All right, there's my conversation with John Norum from his home in Sweden. To your ears, wherever you are around the world. I hope you enjoyed that. I really enjoyed meeting him. Really nice guy and an amazing guitar player with such a great story to tell. So it was great to have him on the show. If you enjoyed it as well, why not share it on your social media, your Facebooks or your Instagrams or whatever you have. We've got some great interviews coming up on the show. Terry Wallman is a guitar player who's been based in LA since the early 80s, relocating from Florida. And he's worked with some incredible artists such as Al Jarreau, Michael McDonald, Joe Walsh, Melissa Manchester, Little Richard. So it was very cool to meet Terry. Really, really great interview coming up there. Also, I talked to Michael Sweet, who is the lead guitarist and lead singer with the band Striper, another 1980s metal band, and they've got a great new record out as well. They're touring as well, not unlike Europe. And man, like Europe, totally on top of their game. Some 30 odd years since they started, so it was pretty cool to meet Michael. So those two interviews are coming up. If you've not subscribed to us yet, do it, and you'll get all of our episodes delivered free to your device, be it through Apple Podcasts, or for Android devices you can use Stitcher Radio or iHeartRadio or many other podcasting apps and organisations. Remember, we're also on Facebook and Instagram. We love to interact with you on there. And hey, I've got to say, thank you so much for the great response to our interview with Michael Ibrahim of MI Audio that we posted up last week. That was really cool, and many of you really dug that, so thank you so much. It's always great to hear from our listeners. Michael actually got a bit of a shout out on the latest episode of No Guitar Is Safe. Elliot Easton from The Cars, who's just been inducted into the Hall of Fame, was talking about his modest pedal board, and there is an MI Audio crunch box on that board. So that was cool. That was cool to hear Michael placed in that context as well. And as we know, he has sold thousands of those things all around the world. So it's no surprise a rock star like Elliot Easton is rocking one of those. Thank you, Daniel Freer, for bringing that to my attention. All right, I'm out of here. My name's Matt Wakeling. You've been listening to the Guitar Speak podcast, and thank you so much for listening.